I have like random UB keys. Is that a UB key? U2F key. Just laying around. I don't think I've done anything with this one. Probably shouldn't throw it away. Maybe I'll put it in the drawer with all the other physical keys that I don't think I need anymore, but I just don't want to throw them away because one day there'll be that one door, and it was like, oh yeah, that's what the key was for. And now there's something important behind that door. Anywho, moving on. I'm not convinced this video is going to keep working because I just had two occasions where I had it sitting here on OBS. I went down to get a cold frosty beer. The joy of doing this later in the day. And I came back and then there was no video on the screen here. But the game is over. G'day. Welcome. Yeah, so it's the other end of the day. It's been a long time since I've had a beer while doing this. Maybe when I was traveling somewhere or other at some time. I'm doing it at the end of the day simply because of travel plans. So I did it a day earlier last week. In that time, I shut it down, shut the live stream down on Thursday and literally headed out straight to the airport. Went off to Singapore. This morning I have come back and I'm backing it up straight away so that I didn't have to carry recording stuff around with me. Because it always turns out a little bit rubbish, to be honest, when you're on the road. G'day, Wayne. Thanks for joining. So, boy, oh boy, it's been like a total whirlwind week. And I don't know, where do I begin with this? In the beginning, set some Singapore context. When I was a child, my father was a pilot, and we ended up leaving Australia when I was 13, actually. And I spent pretty much the rest of my teenage years overseas. Went to the Netherlands for a couple of years, lived there, went to Singapore for a few years, lived there. And because of that, I do find I've got an affinity with both countries. I've been back to the Netherlands quite a bit. Yeah, geez, quite a bit in maybe the last, well, nobody went anywhere for a few years there. But either side of that, been going back quite a bit. I'll be back there in November as well. I'm going to talk about an event coming up in Rotterdam in November. We'll talk about that later. I probably should book some flights for that, actually. But being going back to Singapore as well. Now, Singapore is kind of handy. If you're trying to like wrap your head around the geography, it's handy to where we are in Australia because they're only 2 hours behind time zone wise, and it's about an 8-hour flight from here. Now, that might sound like a long way. However, when we're used to going to pretty much Oslo or somewhere else in Europe most of the time, and it's a 14-hour flight to Dubai, and then you hang around the airport for hours, and then you get another 7-hour flight to the other end, and then you're just shagged because of jet lag for however long. 8 hours and a 2-hour time zone difference actually seems really nice. So you get to fly up there in the day, get up in the morning, normal time, get there in time to have dinner. Coming back, not as nice. Coming back is an overnight flight. And I don't know, I had like 3 hours sleep or something. I did get a little bit of a filler sleep in today, but I'm a bit rougher than normal. Anyway, back to the story. I did go to Singapore as a kid, and I went to an English school for a little bit, and then my parents enrolled me in a brand new school in 1993, dating myself, and it was an Australian school, the Australian International School in Singapore. And on the very first day, there were about 30 kids in this school. This school is now 2,500 people, which is massive. About 30 kids. It was very casual to begin with. We didn't have school uniforms. If you're listening to this in a part of the world where you're like, what the hell is a school uniform? Lucky you. I was never that keen on school uniforms. This is what's quite different here in Australia and I guess the British system in general to, say, a lot of Europe. Let's say somewhere like Norway, which is my closest affinity. Like Charlotte, my Norwegian, soon to be Australian. She will officially become Australian in 10 days from now, which is very exciting. Actually, she'll be both. So best of both worlds. But let's say my Norwegian heritage wife will often say, "What? Like, you come to Australia and you've got schools that you pay money for better educations, that have uniforms, that have religion, and some of them only have boys and some of them only have girls." And this is very, very unusual for Miss Norway and a lot of the rest of the world. But anyway, we did end up with uniforms. And I was there through 93 and 94, and I graduated from year 12 at the end of 94 before coming back to where I live now and going to university. Didn't finish that, but that's a whole other story. Worked out okay. Obviously, things have worked out okay. There's been lots of cool stuff that I've been lucky enough to do. And very interestingly, and we'll talk about the things I did over the last week, but very interestingly, all of the things that have worked out the best for me in life are the things that I have done because I have loved doing them, and I have done them for free, and then they turned out to be worth something at some point in time later on, and I got to make a living out of it, which was actually, it's a nice way of doing it. Stuff I would have done anyway, and then I got to stop doing the stuff I didn't like doing and just do the stuff I wanted to do. So anyway, I went to the school and graduated and didn't think much more about it for many, many, many years. Stayed in touch with a few people, mostly due to social media. Now, of course, back in 93, 94, not only did we not have social media, we didn't have internet, we didn't have mobile devices with supercomputers in your pocket. So some connections were lost, but people sort of rekindle, reconnect. I stayed in touch with the school, and we were chatting a little bit earlier this year about maybe going and doing some events in Singapore related to the cybers and related to the history that I had there with the school. And it just sounded like a cool idea, because I really want to reach more kids around cybersecurity. There's a lot of discussions that I've had with the likes of law enforcement about how do we get the kids that are kind of going off in the wrong direction, the ones who are sending me the breaches that they probably shouldn't be doing, definitely shouldn't be doing. How do we get them at the right age and steer them in the right direction? How do we create a passion for cybersecurity where we have a massive shortfall of skills in this industry? All the other good stuff. How do we get diversity and differences of ideas and opinions and backgrounds into the industry? And a lot of that's going to start with kids. And then there's this whole other bit around my history with the school. And I guess from the school's perspective, being able to say, hey, someone came here and it worked out well. You know, they're still a business. They've got to recruit. So anyway, we agreed to go up to Singapore, Charlotte and I, go up to Singapore and do a whole bunch of different events with the school over the course of a week, and some industry bodies. And I thought, because I'm a little bit jet lagged and I really haven't had much time to focus on much other stuff during the week anyway, let's just have a beer and I'll literally go through the stuff we did. And you know, some people might find it interesting, and that's great. It's a little bit different to the normal stuff. If you don't, well, go and have your own beer. So we went up there, up to Singapore. And if you've never been to Singapore, it is a very unique place in the world for many, many reasons. It's very small. It's a sort of diamond shape, about 40 kilometres wide, 20 kilometres high. There's now 6 million people there. I think there are about 2.5 when I lived there. The largest, if I'm not wrong, population density in the world after Vatican City, where I've also been, but Vatican City is a bit different for many reasons. Massive population density. Singapore is celebrating 60 years of independence this year, independence from Malaysia. And it sort of emerged out of nowhere to be this massive global powerhouse of economy and talent and intellect. And it is amazing how a place that has come from there is where they are in the space of only 60 years. Partly location. Singapore is hanging off right down the bottom of Malaysia, right in the location where any ships wanting to come from Europe that go around through Suez Canal and then eventually want to get around to anywhere from Japan to China to Philippines to Taiwan, any of these areas have to go past the Singapore Straits. So it's a shipping hub, and it's become a financial hub as well, for many, many good reasons. They're in that great location. English is the official language, so it's everyone. They got different accents, but everyone speaks English. So there's a lot of business there, a lot of expats there, as I was as a child, and it's become quite a powerhouse country. Now, because of that, there, as I mentioned, there's a lot of expats there, hence the need for schools like the Australian school. Funky Monk is there. G'day. Yeah, afternoon stream. Yep. Missed the start. A little bit jet lagged. Flew overnight. Wanted to do it today. Can't do it for the next few days for reasons I'll tell you later. hence the beer. Anyway, so we go to Singapore and have a few nights in Sentosa. Now, Singapore's a small island anyway. Sentosa's an even smaller island off the side of it, which when I was living there, wasn't a lot of stuff there. There's some beaches, which beach is a relative term. We have the best beaches in the world, about 800 meters that way. So it's a high bar, but a really good place where there's lots of families and kids and nice sunsets. There was literally a place there in Sentosa on this trip where there's like rows and rows of seats on the beach. And when I first saw it, I'm like, well, this is going to be one of those beach movies. There's going to be a screen there. And then I saw there was a little countdown timer next to all the people. And the penny dropped before I even realized there wasn't a screen. Instead of the screen, everyone's facing the sun for the sunset. So everyone's sitting on like these lawn chairs on the beach just watching the sunset, which was really cool. When I was in Sentosa, went to a ball, a gala ball. Got proper dressed up as opposed to how I normally am. And had a nice time with the New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. So one of the things that I never really grasped as a child living in Singapore was the business relationships that a school like this would have. And Australia and New Zealand, we're very close. We're kind of like cousins who fight sometimes. We're very, I guess, ideologically close. A lot of Kiwis here. We've been to NZ. I've certainly been to NZ a bunch of times. A lot in common. So inevitably, there's going to be a bunch of Kiwis sending their kids to a school like the Australian school in Singapore. So New Zealand Chamber of Commerce runs this ball. We go along, have a fantastic time. Everyone looks awesome. Around that, actually, the day before, I did catch up with my friends at Cloudflare as well. Cloudflare, for Cloudflare, Singapore is a little bit of an Asia-Pacific hub. So I got to spend some time with Cloudflare, which was fantastic. I do try and catch them in the various places I go to. So got to do a little bit of tangential cyber stuff. And then we went to Indonesia for a couple of nights because we had a gap between events. Now, again, if you can't quite wrap your head around the map, when you're in Singapore and you stand on the beach, you're looking at Indonesia. So you can literally see the next country. And for many of you in other parts of the world where you're like, yeah, I live in Europe and we border 5 other countries or something. Remember where I'm coming from. You cannot see any other country from Australia. You cannot swim to any other country. Everything is a long way away. So it's kind of cool having it so close. You can jump on a ferry and an hour and a little bit later, you're on an Indonesian island. So that's what we did. We went off to the island of Bintan for a couple of days. Had a couple of nights of downtime there, which largely amounted to a combination of laying around the pool on one day when it was sunny, and then when it was rainy, sitting inside drinking martinis, doing data breaches and emails the other day, which was also okay. So that was nice. Need more downtime. Went back to Singapore, and then we had a couple of really solid days of events. And I thought I'd give you just a little bit of color as to what they looked like, because they were things that warmed my heart. They were very, very good fun for various reasons. So one of the first events was just having a bit of Q&A from the kids in year 11 and 12 about cybersecurity and about an industry, or rather a career in this industry, and having one of the kids prepare questions along with one of the teachers and I guess ask lots of interesting things about what we do. And I find it just super cool to see kids not only get genuinely interested, but having done their research. Like they ask questions, particularly questions about me and my background. I was like, you haven't just ChatGPT'd this, you've gone out and actually done the hard yards and found information, which I thought was especially cool. Tangential story, the week before we went away, and I'm just not sure they're going to put this out publicly, so I won't actually name them, but I did a sort of an AMA style thing with a bunch of kids in a hacking group. And these kids were, I know their ages because every time one of them wanted to ask a question, they had to say their name and their age and where they were in the world. And these kids were between 13 and 17. And 13, my daughter's 13, so I can picture that age very, very clearly. And they were happy to get on a Zoom call, turn on the camera and ask genuinely good questions about cybersecurity. So that's cool. That's really, really cool. And when I say genuinely good questions, insightful questions too. These kids were not just reading the news, like they were out there creating things and doing work in this industry. And I think they're going to have amazing opportunities ahead of them. So one of the first things we did was a really good sort of Q&A around the industry. And I tend to do a lot of those, particularly online, sitting here. So it's quite different to then go and do something like that in person, like face-to-face with the kids, which is very cool. Kind of wonder why I haven't done that with my own kids' schools yet. Is that nepotistic? If you're from those schools and you listen to this later on, I'd love to do that. Aidan Pierce is here. Hello, Tony. Yeah, thanks, Aidan. That's great, mate. This message finds out that your work in cybersecurity industry feels, yeah. Okay, let's say yes. Did a tour of the school. Now, Singapore, as I mentioned, is massively constrained by space. And inevitably, this ended up being like a multi-story school, not like a high-rise, but I don't know, 3-level sort of situation that was quite large. I think it was about 1 kilometre long from end to end. Very different to what I knew when I was at that school in a different location. It was more than 20 years ago, wasn't it? 30-something years ago. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, geez, 30-something years ago. What I thought was super cool about it, I mean, there's lots of stuff, very well-equipped sort of school, very, I guess, everything you'd expect from a school in Singapore for expatriates that charges a lot of money to go there. The thing I thought was the coolest, given my own interest lately, is the 3D print farm. They had like rows of printers, and my videos stopped. I knew it was going to happen. Now, if you're joining later on, I did make this point earlier on that for some reason my video, as I'd stepped out of the room to get a beer, had frozen. But I'm quite sure that audio still works, and I'm quite sure someone will tell me if it doesn't. So apologies that you're not seeing anything, but just imagine me looking at the camera in what I think is now a freeze frame, and I'm basically in that position and taking the occasional sip of beer. Anywho, 3D print farm. It was really cool seeing a 3D print farm. They had a bunch of Enders there. They had at least 1 or 2 bamboo 3D printers. Didn't see any Prusa. Bit of a shame, but the rest of it was super, super cool. And seeing the kids actually design and create things like, one of the kids there had created like a 3D printed handbag in combination with sewing, because they had proper woodworking and proper sewing gear. I assume there was some metalworking somewhere. I think these things normally go fairly hand in hand. And it was, I guess, just super, super, I don't know, heartwarming to see a combination of, first of all, a school full of 3D printers learning this stuff, and second of all, for it to be the school that I had attended and obviously didn't have 3D printers in the mid-90s. But be that as it may, that was a really awesome setup. I did a little bit of media stuff for the school and then did an event with parents that night as well, because parents are very worried about the cyber these days. And parents have all the sorts of questions you can imagine they do around things like everything from how do we know what the kids are up to, how do we protect their devices. One of the biggest messages I give to parents, and I have written a blog post about this before as well, and I think I referred to it as, I used the word sharenting in the term. That's the sort of parenting in a very helicopter kind of, actually, no, I meant something else. Was it like overzealous parenting? Anyway, search for it, you'll figure it out. Point is, there was a bunch of stuff in there about guidance for parents, and the thing for me that resonates the most, as it did then, I feel it was 5 years ago I wrote that blog post, when my kids were 8 and 10, pre-social media, and it still resonates now when they're 13 and 15, is the involvement of parents in the experience that the kids have online. And by that, I mean very often just having the kids in the living room, using the devices, being able to wander past and go, hey, what are you up to? Not in the Snoopy kind of way. Snoopy kind of, you know what I mean, the nosy kind of way. But more about, is this something that you need to have a chat with an adult about? Now the game's over. I can see your question. Yeah, it's not just you, mate. My video has frozen. it's showing on the camera okay, and then OBS is frozen, and then everything downstream of OBS is frozen. So my gut feel is it might be something to do with the cable, somewhere between. Might be due to the Elgato Cam Link, which takes that HDMI signal and turns into a webcam. So that's great. One more thing to fix while I'm home. Anyway, you can hear me. So the parenting thing is kind of interesting and equally interesting. No matter where I go in the world and I talk to the likes of parents, and mind you, whether I talk to governments or corporations or kids, it's usually the same discussion anyway. This industry doesn't discriminate that way. So it's always the same sorts of questions. The other one that comes up a lot as well is I'm very anti third-party tracking tools that very often fall into that spyware category. And you've probably all seen me load various spyware breaches into Have I Been Pwned? The M-Spies of the world. I think M-Spies in there multiple times, actually. And I vehemently dislike this model of parenting. You have native controls in your devices, which will allow you to set the children's screen time, see where they are, have some control over the people they connect with, but will not allow you to see their photos. And because of that, it will not put their photos on the internet in a way that other parties can retrieve them. It will keep them on their device and it will sync them via the cloud service of one of the world's largest tech companies and keep them safe. So I'd much rather see those native controls used. Niren says, modern day teenage kids wouldn't be able to relate thanks to social media influx. Well, so here's the other thing. I don't think that social media is all bad for kids. I think it can be bad. I also see it, especially with my 15-year-old son, as the means by which the kids socialize or rather plan their IRL social activities. You know, they might be using Snapchat to have discussions about where do we catch up and go for a surf. And that's great. I'm all for that. It's really less about the technology and more about the way it's applied. And that comes back to my point again about how involved are the parents in that. I also, for the most part, expect that the kids will be smarter than the parents. And every time I'm happy looking parents in the eye and saying, you know, your kids are probably smarter than you already as it relates to the technology. They'll be able to do things that you don't understand. They'll be able to get around controls that you put in place. They will see things that you don't like. And I said that very specifically on multiple occasions. No matter what controls you put in place. And certainly we had many points of referencing the recent legislation in the UK about the Online Safety Act and the fact that it will not stop kids from seeing things that you might not want them to accidentally, and also having them see things that they might be deliberately seeking out. Now, Wayne's saying in OBS, deactivate the camera, it should be able to enable again. Now, mate, I did try that when it died before I started the live stream, but hey, why not? Let's give it another run. Now, my video capture device is here. That is my Sony. It is currently now... Actually, that was just the audio. Ooh, turn that off. How do I activate, unactivate? Video capture device. If I got to there, what if I turn it off? That just turned it off. I can still see levels from audio. Now turn it on. Now I'm just toggling the little eye icon next to it in sources. That is not changing anything that I see in the OBS display. You know what? Just for kicks, if I open the camera app on my PC, can it see the feed? Yeah, it can. Which is interesting because that says to me, not only is the camera still working, but the Elgato Cam Link is still working because it's making a video feed through to the PC, and it appears to just be OBS not wanting to send the picture. I don't know if that's it. All right, if you have any other great ideas, Wayne, let me know. I will continue talking in the interim. So, I spoke to the parents. Next day, I spoke to some kids in Year 5. Now, this was really cool because Year 5 is now a lot younger than any of my kids. You know, this is reaching towards the end of primary school. These are kids who who still have like that cheeky enthusiasm where they're not turned into moody teenagers yet. Ask me how I know. And and it was very cool to see, again, even at that age. So year 5, they must be about 11 years old, I guess, at that age. Even at that age, the research they had done on the industry, on me, and then what some of them were doing. There was one kid there who was trying to build a kid-safe search engine. And he had managed to build the front end of it. I think there might have been some tooling at play there as well. Managed to build the front end of it, and he was trying to figure out how to build the back end so that when you searched for a term, you could tie it into like Disney and National Geographic and things like this. And we had a little bit of a chat about APIs and the way they're meant to work. And maybe these services provide APIs to help you find what you need to. That would be super, super cool if it could do that. And I really like the way a kid at that age had that curiosity to try and figure out the problem. Wayne says, that's just hiding the scene. There's an option to disable the camera and re-enable the camera. Where's that? Do I right-click on the camera and disable? I don't think I want to remove it because I'm going to have to add it back in again. That doesn't sound like something I want to do live. Scale, blending, deinterlacing. Auto transfer, copy. Not seeing it on the sources. Now, well, actually, I'm not going to see it in the audio mixer, am I? It's literally not the problem. If I right-click, enable preview, if I turn enable preview off, and then I'll turn enable preview on. No, that didn't work either. All right, let's see if Wayne can figure out where the disable camera and re-enable camera option is. Or is it down there? It's not that one. I don't know. I'll figure that out later. I'll keep going while Wayne looks into it. So that was the young kids. We then spent a bit of time with the New Zealand Chamber of Commerce doing some Q&A. Actually, no, wrong way around. Oz Chamber of Commerce doing some Q&A roundtable stuff over lunch, and some people from industry there as well. And many of these industries are companies that either have a strong presence in Australia or some are of Australian origin. Big companies that you know of, and all the sorts of questions that organisations are grappling with now around cybersecurity, particularly in an era. Have you noticed lately how many incidents we've seen where we've got the likes of the scattered spider folks somehow able to consistently socially engineer organisations and get into the likes of Salesforce instances of help of support systems? Now, I got an email from Cloudflare just the other day about this due to a compromise with Drift. We've seen many others announced as well that are in a similar situation. And it's kind of crazy that we've got a situation where I'm sitting around the table with executives from multi-billion-dollar companies, and it's like, watch out for the kids. Watch out for the kids socially engineering your organization. And there are certainly multiple people at that table from organizations that had fallen victim to this sort of thing. And I'm obviously not going to say which ones they are. We know them. We've heard them in the news a lot. And it is just fascinating that this continues to be a problem. It's like, yes, I'm concerned about North Korea. I think someone made the point, it might have even been one of the government folks there, about data breaches and hacking, funding other forms of crime. And I said, look, it's interesting to me that there are so many instances of data breaches where money is either not a motivation at all, or the sorts of money which are obtained are really not enough to do much of significance with otherwise. Now, ransomware is a different story. Obviously, ransomware has huge sums of money, and it's going to parts of the world who are probably not that sympathetic to those of us in places like Australia or Singapore. So that was Oz Chamber. Oz Chamber was good. What else did we do after that? Went and did an event. This is already on the social medias with ANZ Bank, and I think that was also with the New Zealand Chamber. Now, ANZ Bank is one of our big 4 Aussie banks here. They have a strong presence in Singapore as well. And we had a bunch of people from different cybersecurity capacities or different business capacities there And we did a really good fireside chat there with one of the guys from ANZ. And again, like lots of really good, interesting questions about what does cybersecurity mean for the folks in those industries at the moment. One lady asked me, she said, I think the way she phrased it was like, what's the most interesting data breach you've seen? And I so one day want this is going to have to be like a pub talk or something, but I really want to do like the adults only version of the craziest shit I've seen in data breaches. And it is hilarious, and I will never be able to write it. I've already had complaints at one conference, two conferences I can think of for even beginning to touch on the subject. I'll just leave that hanging out there. If anyone actually wants to organise a conference that is properly off the record and people go there expecting to see really, interesting stuff, let me know. I'll be in on that. No recording. So she had asked me about the most interesting one. So, of course, I had to talk about Shit Express. Now, if you are not familiar with Shit Express, do Google it. Do Google it. Possibly don't even have to wait till you get home, because all it is it's a website where you can post shit in a box to someone. Can you imagine that? Posting shit in a box. That is a wild idea. Anyway, they made a lot of claims about anonymity, and then they got popped and data got leaked. And amongst all of the messages and the recipients of the aforementioned shit were the IP addresses of these shit posters themselves, all included in this breach. So perhaps not a whole lot of anonymity going on there. Anyway, I think it's a funny story. Now that was about where we wrapped it up for the formal things. Actually, the other thing, that was kind of like one of the coolest things, and I totally forgot about it for a moment there. I did get presented with a really cool plaque. I put this in the hero image actually for this this live stream. So I got a little thing here in the distinguished AIS, Australian International Schools Singapore, alumni section. And it says, what does it say? Troy Hunt, distinguished alumni, presented Troy Hunt, founder of Have I Been Pwned, Microsoft Regional Director and MVP, in recognition of your outstanding contributions to society and the remarkable achievements that continue to inspire and make our AIS community proud. Your work in educating developers and sharing cybersecurity practices at national and global levels helps build a safer digital future. Your return to AIS is a powerful reminder of the enduring connection you share with our school family. We are honoured to celebrate your leadership, your impact, and our shared commitment to inspire, educate, and empower the next generation. And that was extraordinarily unexpected. I had absolutely no idea. I thought I was just going to go and talk to some kids and parents and people in suits about cybersecurity, and that would be it. And that was just lovely. I'm just so chuffed to have received that. And to start sort of closing out that whole discussion, everyone I met there was just so extraordinarily nice. And it's quite fascinating. Everyone was so enthusiastic about living in Singapore as well. And many of them had lived in many other parts of particularly Asia and moved around quite a lot too. And there are folks out there that just love being in that part of the world and being a part of the excitement and the buzz that is places like Singapore, Hong Kong's another popular one where a lot of these people come and go from. And we got treated so extremely well by people that you could tell were genuinely happy to have us there as we were to be there with them. So that was my Singapore trip. I'll answer one more question and then I'm going to drop off and try and start getting, what's the time? 5:30, I can't go to bed yet. Try and stay awake for another few hours. Aidan, are there reliable AI-driven anomaly detection systems to test and mitigate such threats in real-world scenarios? I think your key word there was reliable, because there's lots of organizations making these claims now. Look, a simple answer, I don't know. I know that when we think logically about it, the promise of being able to use AI to do anomaly detection, especially on very large volumes of data, and draw inferences well above and beyond what we can just as humans, that potential is amazing. Like that is just awe-inspiring. And during this last week, every single meeting I had descended into a chat about AI in one way or another, whether it was AI in the context that you've just put it, Aidan, about how can we use it to do good things, or how can we use it to do bad things? Well, not us, but how can the bad guys use it to do bad things? One of the discussions that came up a lot with the kids was thinking about how AI might impact your career choices. While I was away, I did actually spend a lot of time on the treadmill, which is good. So I think I kept my exercise up. And one of the stories I watched, I normally chuck on YouTube and watch stuff for half an hour while I run, was about some of the jobs that AI was impacting. And one of them was a singer whose music had been used to train AI, and now it was replicating her voice. Another one was an author, and it had read all these books, and now it can write books like him. And another one was a voiceover actor. And this lady was saying how hard it is to get work now doing voiceover for TV commercials because of AI. And it's like, yeah, that is just probably not the industry you want to go into now. But there are many other industries where AI is changing the face of it. Software development, perfect one. We're using AI to do a lot more software development. It's still crap at a bunch of stuff as well. But if you're the person that knows how to use the AI to do software development more efficiently, suddenly you've got a massive leg up from where you were before. That's the way I feel it is for me now, writing predominantly Have I Been Pwned code. I'm using AI to generate a lot of stuff. Now, this is not vibe coding. We should do another podcast on that another time. This is very discrete tasks, writing blocks of code, structuring an application the way that I know it should be structured, having done this for, what are we at now, 30 and a bit years, but just automating the process of generating a lot of that software. So it's going to change the face of how we work, all of us, one way or another. And it is hard to think of any career that won't be impacted to one extent or another by AI. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of my cold beer as I start acclimatizing back to Australia. I'll figure out what went on with this video too. Hang on, Wayne's worked it out. In sources, select your video capture device, and above, click the deactivate button, click again. In sources, click your video capture device. Oh, now I see it. Deactivate. I've got two here. What do I have two? I'll do this one too. Deactivate. Oh, that was the one. And now if I activate it. Nope. Oh, wait. Did it work? Let's see. Beautiful. It worked. Thanks, Wayne. Where were you 20 minutes ago, mate? Okay, I'll get that next time. I don't know why I did that though. Maybe I'll reboot my computer and it will be fine next time. But anyway, it just goes to show I was here the whole time. I just wasn't looking. Thanks very much for watching. I'm going to end it now. I'll get back to a normal cadence being first thing Friday morning. Oh, last thing. I said I couldn't do it the next few days, and I'll tell you why at the end. We're doing a PADI open water diving course. We being the whole family. So my son's got a school camp coming up. If he has his open water diving certificate beforehand, he can go scuba diving, which if I was a kid going to a camp and I had the option to go scuba diving, I'd be like, this is freaking awesome. So we decided that since he's doing it, we might as well all do it. It just means we've got 3 very, very early starts the next 3 days while we all go and learn how to scuba dive properly. I have done it a couple of times before. I remember a little bit about it, but yeah, now we'll get a shiny certificate. So that'll be us tomorrow in the good Aussie spring. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll catch you next week.